And now we welcome our first honored speakers, Ambassador Danon and Ambassador Nikki Haley. Ambassador Danon recently headed back from the United States, ending his stint as Israel's 17th permanent representative to the United Nations. Danny, we miss you. Come back to New York. I'll take you to lunch on the Lower East Side. Now, of course, prior to that, Danny served as Israel's Deputy Minister of Defense and Israel's Minister of Science. He, of course, currently holds the position of Chairman of the World Likud. And, of course, at the UN, the World Ambassador of Danon's abilities and everything that he did really became a focal point. He became the first Israeli ever to lead a permanent UN committee. You have to understand how groundbreaking that was. He also spearheaded numerous resolutions and efforts that changed Israel's standing on the world stage. Now he is using his experience and connections to bring numerous initiatives in Israel to, of course, the world. This conference will basically reinforce his commitment to and knowledge of Israel's pioneering technologies and how they can be used to help communities in need. Nikki Haley also served at the United Nations. She served as the U.S. ambassador to the UN from 2017 to 2019. Now, prior to that, she served as a member of the National Security Council and President Trump's cabinet, where she broke ground as the very first Indian-American woman to hold a cabinet-level position. Born in Bamberg, South Carolina, to Indian immigrant parents, Ambassador Haley's political career includes serving as representative of South Carolina's District 87 and as the first minority and first woman to ever serve as governor of the state of South Carolina. We welcome both the ambassadors for a very intimate discussion and conversation about their time at the United Nations, COVID, Israeli technology and innovation, the U.S.-Israeli relationship, and what the future holds for them. Ambassadors, take it away.
Welcome, Ambassador Nikki Haley. We are delighted that you are able to join us at our first ever DiploTech Global Summit. Thank you for sparing the time today to be with us. We very much hope to welcome you in person to Israel, but in Corona times that is sadly not possible. We would love to have you here next year. We had an amazing period at the UN together, and today we would like to discuss that time, but also look ahead and speak about technology and innovation, among other topics. When you visited Israel not so long ago, we were able to present you with the security challenges we face, but also a glimpse of our successful technologies. You saw for yourself our startup spirit and the innovation powerhouse that Israel has become. We are keen to continue to demonstrate the advanced solutions engineered in Israel. It is important for us to assist other nations and to help those in need. Ambassador Haley, we have seen new innovations emerge from Israel as a result of COVID. Do you think this new technology from Israel can help support our position internationally? And what is your vision for post-COVID future collaboration between nations?
Well, Danny, it's great to be with you. I've missed seeing you. Happy Hanukkah to everyone, and it's great to be with you. I certainly do look forward to coming to Israel again, and so I look forward to the conference next year. You know, I think COVID has done a lot to our communities. I mean, the entire world stood still at one moment in time because of a threat that China gave to the world. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities here. I think there are opportunities in all of the countries coming together to hold China accountable, to come together and say, what could we have done differently in light of this pandemic? What could we have better collaborated on? And what are we going to do the next time this happens? God forbid it happens again, but we have to be smart and assume that we start thinking about what we're going to do the next time it happens. Israel could be a fantastic player in this. I mean, I think we all know the research, the innovation, the technology that comes out of Israel. I think this is a real opportunity for Israel to shine. So many countries already know the talents and the gifts that Israel has, but this is a time that we could put it on display. You know, I often told you at the UN, I feel like so many countries spend so much time talking about Israel as it relates to the Palestinian issue. What I want to see is people start talking about Israel as it relates to their talent and their research and their technology and their gifts to the world that so many people can have. Because I think that the world knows how smart Israel is. Now it's time to collaborate and really use that technology for good. Not for every country, but for those countries that want to partner with Israel and be a true friend and a true ally. We should make sure that we see more of that collaboration go back, because I think Israel has a lot to offer.
Great. I would like to ask you a quick follow-up question, if I may. We speak a lot about vaccinations here in Israel. Do you intend to get vaccinated for COVID?
Yes, I intend to get vaccinated. I intend to have my family vaccinated. And I think what you have to understand, and what I've told people in America, is the fact that, look, we have the testing. Has it gone faster? Yes, but they didn't skip any steps along the way. All they did was merge phase 2 and 3 together. The same accountability, the same testing, the same risk factors, the same issues that they had to look into, had it been a long drawn out process, was still done in this. And if you look at just Pfizer and Moderna alone, 70,000 people have already been tested. So this is a vaccine that will be heavily tested, heavily researched. We will know exactly what's going to happen. I think everyone should work with their physician to make sure that they get the vaccine that's best for them. But the sooner that everyone can get vaccinated and get educated on what this means, the better and safer and healthier the world can be.
Thank you. Going back to our UN days together, I was extremely honored to serve with you and achieve new records in a very hostile environment like the UN. We fought together on behalf of Israel and the US to promote our shared values. My father taught me to always speak out when I see an injustice. We know you feel the same way, and we all admire you for that. The UN for me was 5 years of highs and lows. I remember my lowest moment. It was when a hostile resolution 2334, passed in the Security Council. I fought for Israel alone, without our greatest ally, the United States, by our side. One of my proudest moments was when we together prepared the ground for the historical decision to move the US Embassy to Jerusalem. I want to ask you, what was your lowest moment at the UN, and what was your proudest moment?
Well, you know, I think back to our days at the UN fondly. There were no easy days. And for you, I will forever appreciate the strength, the sacrifice, the effort that you really showed at the UN, because there wasn't just one day you were fighting alone. There were many days that you were fighting alone, and it was wrong. And I think that after you and I had our first conversation about your experiences of being alone with everyone standing and cheering as Resolution 2334 passed, was one of the lowest moments for the UN ever. And I think that, you know, I promised you that day that under my watch that would never happen again. So when I look at low moments, I don't know that I had low moments as much as I had frustrating moments. You know, frustrating in seeing how the United Nations was political and bureaucratic, and they claimed they were for peace and security, but it was only when peace and security was easy for them. It was only when peace and security made sense for them. It wasn't for peace and security all of the time. And I think that what was frustrating to me was, you know, one, what I've said many times, were the Israel bashing sessions that happen once a month. That were supposed to be about the Middle East, but always seemed to be about Israel. It was about the fact that, you know, when Russia held back and didn't allow us to have the accountability mechanism against Syria on chemical weapons. It was on the fact that I couldn't get anyone to realize the hypocrisy of the Human Rights Council and the need that we had to get them to acknowledge how Agenda Item 7 was unfair to Israel and Israel alone. But also the fact that it was a place where human rights abusers went to protect themselves and point fingers at others. I was frustrated at the fact that, you know, that countries cowered, that they read off of paper, and that they didn't actually speak the truth and be honest with their citizens. And I think that, looking back at that, I look at the fact that, I think to one moment where I was with the Emirati ambassador and the Saudi ambassador, and the British ambassador and I were having a meeting with them about Yemen. And they were complaining, the Saudis in particular, and were complaining about the fact that, why isn't anyone calling out the Houthis? Why is everyone giving them a pass? Why aren't they acknowledging the harm that they're doing and the fact that they're a terrorist group? And I stopped the meeting and I said, as much as you're complaining about the Houthis, I could say the same thing for Hamas. And they just got quiet. We went back to our meeting, and afterwards they took me outside and they said to me, you're right. We know that we bash Israel more than we should, but we do it because that's what our constituents want. And I said at that moment in time, at some point, you have to have the courage to tell your constituents the truth. And then I look back, and Danny, to see the Abraham Accords get signed, and to see normalization of Israel with Bahrain and the Emiratis, and to see all the countries that are going to start to follow after that, is just a miraculous moment. So many frustrating moments, but I will tell you my proudest moment was definitely, my proudest and my hardest moment was definitely when I stood alone as the world condemned us for moving our embassy to Israel. But it was the proudest moment because I believed in what we were doing. We were fighting for truth, and we were fighting for the fact that we had every right to put our embassy anywhere that we wanted. And our embassies, our United States embassies, are always in the capitals of every country. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Our embassy belonged in Jerusalem, and it was just a proud moment. Even if it was standing alone, it was a proud moment to stand for what I knew was right.
Thank you. And we just celebrated the third anniversary of the embassy in Jerusalem.